The stranger's fingers wrapped around my arm so suddenly that my heart nearly stopped. My boarding pass slipped from my hand and fluttered onto the polished airport floor. Before I could pull away or call for security, I looked into his eyes. They weren't dangerous. They weren't angry. They were terrified. The kind of fear that doesn't come from missing a flight, but from losing everything. His lips trembled as he whispered that he only needed 40 minutes, begging me to pretend I was the woman he loved. Behind him, I noticed an elderly couple scanning the terminal with desperate hope written across their faces, and something inside me told me this wasn't a scam. This was the final chapter of someone else's broken story, and somehow, I had just walked into it. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Midnight Love Stories. Your support helps keep these emotional stories alive. The morning sunlight poured through the massive glass windows of the airport, turning everything golden. Travelers hurried from one gate to another with coffee cups, backpacks, and dreams of reaching somewhere new. I had always loved airports because they reminded me that every person carried a story. Some were beginning new chapters while others were trying to escape old ones. That morning, however, I wasn't thinking about anyone else. My name was Adrian Mercer, and I was leaving Chicago for Seattle after accepting a new architecture project that promised a fresh start after years of disappointment. Life had become painfully quiet after my engagement ended nearly a year earlier. I had buried myself in work, convincing everyone around me that success was enough to fill the empty spaces. But airports have a strange way of making loneliness louder. Watching families hug goodbye and couples laugh while dragging matching suitcases reminded me of everything I had lost. Then the stranger grabbed my arm. He introduced himself quickly as Rowan Ellis, a man in his early 30s dressed in a navy blazer that looked as though he had slept in it. His hair was messy, his face pale, and exhaustion surrounded him like a shadow. He apologized repeatedly, his voice shaking with panic rather than confidence. He explained everything in hurried whispers while constantly glancing toward the elderly couple standing several yards away. They were elegantly dressed and carried bouquets of fresh flowers. Their hopeful smiles made no sense until Rowan admitted the truth. His parents had flown across the country to finally meet the woman he had told them about for almost 2 years. The problem was that she no longer existed in his life. Months earlier, the woman he planned to marry had left him without warning, ending their relationship only days before their engagement party. Rowan couldn't bear telling his aging parents because his father had recently undergone heart surgery, and every stressful conversation seemed to affect his recovery. Instead, he kept pretending everything was fine, promising that one day they would all meet. That day had arrived. His parents believed his girlfriend was meeting them at the airport before everyone boarded a cruise vacation they had planned together. But she wasn't coming. And Rowan had only 40 minutes before they would discover the truth. Normally I would have walked away. Every sensible instinct told me that pretending to be someone else's partner was ridiculous. Yet I couldn't stop looking at the elderly couple waiting with flowers in their hands, smiling every time they thought they spotted their son. Sometimes people aren't asking to be saved forever. Sometimes they're only asking to survive one impossible moment. Against every logical thought in my mind, I nodded. For the next 40 minutes, I would become someone else's hope. Rowan looked as though the weight of the world had lifted from his shoulders. He thanked me so many times that I almost laughed despite the absurdity of the situation. As we approached his parents, my heartbeat grew louder with every step. His mother, Marisol Ellis, immediately embraced me with tears in her eyes. She smelled like lavender and homemade cookies, and before I could even react, she whispered how happy she was to finally meet the woman who had made her son smile again. The guilt hit me instantly. His father, Victor Ellis, stood a little slower, leaning on a polished wooden cane. His silver hair caught the sunlight, and although illness had stolen some of his strength, kindness still radiated from his face. He shook my hand warmly and thanked me for loving his son. Those simple words pierced deeper than I expected. Because despite the lie surrounding us, I could see how much these parents genuinely loved their child. For the next half hour, everything became strangely natural. We walked through the terminal together, sharing coffee while waiting for boarding announcements. They asked how Rowan and I had met. Before panic could settle in, Rowan smoothly explained that we first crossed paths inside a bookstore during a rainy afternoon. I added tiny details about spilled coffee, forgotten umbrellas, and favorite novels until even I almost believed the story. Marisol laughed often. Victor smiled every time Rowan looked at me. I noticed something unexpected. Whenever Rowan glanced toward his parents, the fear disappeared from his face. Instead, there was relief. Not because we were fooling them. Because for the first time in months, they looked completely happy. As boarding time approached, Victor suddenly stopped walking. His breathing became heavier. The smile faded. Everyone around us continued rushing through the terminal while our little world froze. Rowan instantly supported his father as nearby airport staff called for medical assistance. Fortunately, after several tense minutes, paramedics confirmed it wasn't another heart attack. Stress and fatigue had simply overwhelmed him. While Victor rested in a wheelchair, he quietly reached for Rowan's hand. He admitted he had known. He had known for weeks. Parents always know when their children are pretending to be okay. He confessed that he recognized the sadness behind Rowan's smile long before arriving at the airport. The stories about his mysterious girlfriend had become less detailed. Phone calls grew shorter. His laughter sounded forced. Victor wasn't fooled. Neither was Marisol. They had only continued pretending because they didn't want their son to feel ashamed. The truth settled over us with breathtaking silence. Rowan lowered his head, unable to speak. His mother gently touched his shoulder and reminded him that losing someone never meant losing the chance to love again. Families weren't built on perfect stories. They were built on honesty. Tears filled Rowan's eyes. Mine weren't far behind. He confessed everything. The heartbreak. The loneliness. The fear of disappointing them. Every painful detail spilled out inside that quiet airport waiting area while strangers unknowingly walked past. No one judged him. No one blamed him. Instead, both parents wrapped him in the kind of embrace that only mothers and fathers can give. Watching that moment changed something inside me. For so long, I believed vulnerability made people weak. Yet here stood a man whose greatest act of courage wasn't pretending everything was fine. It was finally admitting he wasn't. When the boarding announcement echoed across the terminal, the cruise plans were postponed. Victor insisted his health mattered less than spending genuine time together. Instead of flying away separately, the family decided to stay in the city for a few more days. Then something unexpected happened. Marisol turned toward me. She smiled through her tears and thanked me. Not for pretending to be Rowan's girlfriend, but for reminding her son that complete strangers could still choose compassion in a world growing colder every day. I didn't know how to respond. Because the truth was simpler. Helping Rowan had reminded me of something I had forgotten myself. Kindness doesn't always require certainty. Sometimes it only requires showing up. As I picked up my suitcase and prepared to head toward my own gate, Rowan walked beside me in silence. Neither of us spoke for several moments. Finally, he thanked me one last time. He admitted that when he reached for my arm earlier that morning, he expected rejection. Instead, he found someone willing to stand beside a stranger during the hardest 40 minutes of his life. I smiled. Perhaps we had both rescued each other in different ways. Before walking away, Rowan handed me a small folded boarding pass from an earlier cancelled flight. On the back, he had written a single sentence. The people who appear by accident often become the reason we believe in tomorrow. I tucked it carefully into my wallet. Months later, whenever life became overwhelming, I would read those words again. Not because they reminded me of Rowan, but because they reminded me that every ordinary day holds the possibility of becoming someone's unforgettable miracle. Sometimes we spend years searching for purpose in grand achievements while overlooking the quiet opportunities placed directly in front of us. One unexpected act of compassion inside a busy airport transformed 4 lives forever. Not through romance. Not through wealth. Not through miracles. Only through choosing kindness when walking away would have been easier. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to Midnight Love Stories. Your support allows more heartfelt stories like this to reach people who may need them most. Rose special request, before you leave, comment below with the words, "Kindness always finds its way." We'd love to know you're part of this compassionate community. No one knows who the next stranger will be. No one knows whose silent battle is hidden behind a tired smile. But perhaps the greatest gift we can offer another human being isn't having all the answers. Perhaps it's simply being willing to stand beside them, even if only for 40 unforgettable minutes.